Welcome to You Decide 2023, the race for Jacksonville Mayor. This is a special edition of Jacksonville's Morning News on 104.5 WOKV. Live from the Farrah and Farrah Performance Studio, here's Rich Jones and April Davis.
A lot of weighty issues, and we have a lot of ground to cover, so there's no sense wasting any time. Welcome into the Farrah and Farrah Performance Studio. I'm Rich Jones alongside my colleague and friend April Davis. Stephen Ponson will be along with some of your questions as well. Donna Deegan, Daniel Davis are here in studio. You should know them by now, but I'm really interested in knowing, like, what's the one thing that give your elevator speech, Donna Deegan. Let's start with you. 30 seconds, something we don't know about Donna Deegan.
Something you don't know about me?
Yeah.
Well, that's not an introduction. Something you don't know about me. Okay, I gave my dad a kidney when I was 18. How about that?
Really?
Well,
That's the thing that a lot of people don't know about me.
There you go.
That's the ultimate gesture.
And
Welcome
so,
into the studio. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. That's
Thank
a
you.
great story, Daniel. Tell
Right,
us something.
right off the bat,
I
he
don't know
tries
if
to
you
give
can
me,
top
what do
that
people
one,
not know
but
about you?
let's
Lived
see
in
if
the
we can
public
top
eye
it.
my whole life.
What might we know?
There's
know
no
about
way I
Daniel
can
Davis?
top that. That's pretty incredible. And I can't walk by a jar of M&Ms without grabbing a handful. How about that?
Peanut or
Absolutely peanut M&Ms for sure.
Can I just say that you have just seen that we have something in common right there?
See, this is
See?
good. We have a lot
We,
in common.
I cannot also walk by a peanut M&M without grabbing that.
We're all going to go for a run after this. Daniel did about 3 miles this morning, so everyone is ready for questions. April, we've got a lot of ground to cover. There's
We do.
no sense wasting any more time. Let's go ahead and dig in.
let's do it. So I know you both saw the UNF poll that came out from the Public Opinion Research Lab. And, of course, it shows a close race between the two of you. But also, it asked directly to about 650 likely voters. In your opinion, what is the most important problem facing Jacksonville? You both know crime was the number one answer, 47%. Number 2 and 3, housing costs and education. So we'll start with Donna. What do you think you can do as mayor to address those top concerns?
Well, obviously, on the crime front, I think it's going to be very important to fund additional officers, that we need to make sure we have enough officers on the street so that we have a large population that is growing all the time, so we need enough officers. But we also need to make sure that we're getting underneath the causes of crime. We have a city that over the last 8 years, we have seen just mired in a terrible murder rate. 4 times per capita that of New York City. So we have to do more than just put more officers on the streets. We need to make sure that we're investing in intervention and prevention programs. We need to make sure in terms of education that we are investing in literacy programs, because what we know from research is that if a child does not have a literacy by 3rd grade, that very likely they're going to be involved in crime. In fact, 70% of people in our jails are people who have a literacy issue. So education is incredibly important. And of course, 47% of people said crime, 53% said other things like affordable housing. We've got a big affordable housing issue in this city, which is not the same thing as workforce housing, by the way. So we got to make sure that we're tackling those problems as well.
And just for people listening and watching on Facebook or watching on YouTube, this is a forum. This is not a debate. We don't have time limits. We want to have a free and open discussion. So same question to you, Daniel Davis. We are asking about the poll that we just talked about, the top concerns for Jacksonville voters: crime, housing costs, education. What would you do as mayor?
Sure. And Rich and April, thank you so much for having us today. Starting the day off right. And all the listeners out there driving to work, I'm honored to be here. I think Jacksonville got it right in the poll. Everybody is concerned about crime. I've literally stood on thousands of front doors talking to citizens about what's most important to them. And crime comes out more than anything else. But we also know that there are real citizens that are struggling to make ends meet on a monthly basis. And we have to think about how we, as the city, can make sure their costs are lower. When I was on the Jacksonville City Council, I led the charge to bring about 100 new police officers to the streets and put them in the highest crime areas. But we also focused on prevention and intervention methods with the Jacksonville Journey, where we were able to bring the community into City Hall and talk to the city leaders about what they were seeing in the streets. But we also focused on bringing the city leaders out into the community, and crime went down. And you can't argue with that. The numbers are the numbers, and we were able to put the bad guys in jail and keep them there. And we were able to help folks that were prisoners in their own homes be able to take over their neighborhood again. And that's something I'm going to do as your next mayor. I'm going to add 200 new police officers to the street, but that doesn't mean just enforcement. I think enforcement's critically important. It's a triage situation of we have to get men and women in blue in the highest crime areas, but we also need to focus on how we keep children out of the criminal justice system, and that's what we're going to focus on.
You seem to both agree on the Jacksonville journey and some of the elements of it. How far are you both willing to go with bringing back some of those programs, and then where does the money come from in your budget for it?
Listen, while Daniel was on the council, we let go of the Jacksonville journey. I mean, that's the unfortunate part. Why did we let it go? Why did we stop funding it? There has never been a more effective tool that we have had. I've had many conversations with former Sheriff Nat Glover about this, because he put in place the community policing component, which frankly is going to be in the hands of the sheriff's office. The sheriff is elected. He gets to decide what kind of policing that we do in the communities. My role as mayor will be largely economic levers and educational levers, but at the end of the day, that program was entirely effective. It was very effective, and we stopped funding it, and the same folks that are running his campaign are the folks that decided to move on from it. So I'm thrilled to bring it back, and we would pay for that the same way that we're going to pay for those extra police officers.
How did it go away,
We
Dan?
pay for it with our. I'm sorry, I just want to say we'll pay for it because Jacksonville is a growing city, and we'll pay for it with ad valorem money.
Actually, that's not the case. I was not on the city council at that time. Mayor Alvin Brown dismantled the Jacksonville journey and defunded the police department. And I think if anybody goes back to look to see what times I was on city council and when I was in the Florida legislature, that doesn't match up. But that's okay. We can move on to another question.
Well, no, I don't want to move on because at the end of the day, this is exactly what happens every time. Mayor Alvin Brown was blamed for things that Mayor Alvin Brown didn't do. And so what happens every one of these cycles is that you see the same folks who have run us down the same ruts with crime ask for another turn. And we need to put somebody in charge who sees the entire community, who brings the entire community into the process, and who is committed to not only our police officers, but to our community members. So I'd like to talk about something else, if you don't mind, if we could segue.
I want to give Daniel a chance to
please,
just respond to that one.
And you have to put a little bit of common sense to this approach. Why would the Fraternal Order of Police, why would former Sheriff John Rutherford, why would current Sheriff T.K. Waters all endorse my campaign if I was responsible for what Ms. Deegan just said?
Daniel, let's be honest. Let's be honest.
I didn't interrupt you.
They're Republicans. They're Republican.
I did not interrupt you when you were talking.
They are Republican sheriffs who are supporting a Republican candidate. I get it. It's political theater more than anything else.
I didn't interrupt you when you were talking. And
well, then tell the truth, and I won't have to interrupt you.
Let's have a great conversation. What I would ask the citizens to do that are listening today, do a deep dive on this. Don't take what either one of us are saying as truth. Go do your research and find out who fought to add those 100 new police officers to the streets. Go do your research to find out in 2007, when I was city council president, who led the charge. And I think you're going to find out that I did. Not what I'm going to do, what I did. And you can judge me on my past, knowing that when I tell you I'm going to add 200 new police officers to the streets in the future, you can look back and see what I already did.
Let's move on to the cost of a Jacksonville Journey style return. At the time, it was about $30 million. We'll start with you, Danny. If you do see some elements of it that you want to come back with, do you have a plan? How much does it look like, and where does that money come from? And the same question would go to Donna Deegan.
Sure. I think that there is great opportunity in the city budget. I was finance chair of the Jacksonville City Finance Committee twice when I was on the Jacksonville City Council president, youngest city council president in Jacksonville history. And so I have an in-depth knowledge of how the budget works. And I understand there are all sorts of ways that we can fund this priority, if you make it a priority. And I know where the opportunities are to find the dollars to make sure we fund this. It takes about $100,000 per police officer to add to the street. So whenever you think about somebody appropriating, $10 million, you have to think about that in the mindset of, do we really want to spend this money here, or could we add 100 new police officers to the street? And what we're going to do immediately is to dissect the budget, understand the areas of where we can spend money and where we can have restraint. And I am going to have a smaller government. I'm going to have a more government focused on public safety. I'm going to have a government focused on making sure that your livelihood is more affordable and your neighborhood's more affordable. And because of the experience I have, we'll be able to make sure we find every bit of that dollar concept and make sure that we add it to the streets.
Donna
the
Deegan, with a reboot of some form of Jacksonville Journey, and maybe a lingering question might be, do we rebrand it in terms of the community approach and expectation and explanation to the community? How much does it look like? Where do you come with the money for these intervention and prevention programs?
Well, listen, there is some grant money that we can bring down too that we've left on the table for some of these things. You can't do that for personnel, but you can do it for some things like training. You can do it for equipment. So there's other monies that we can bring into this equation. But I got to go back to what he was saying about who is responsible for this. I went back and looked at the last two mayoral debates where the Republican sheriff endorsed the Republican candidate for mayor, because this is how it works. They all have the same political consultant. And so they're asking us to believe that this same system where we focus singularly on one thing is going to make us safer. And the truth is, what's going to make us safer is better communication between our people and our police, better education, better literacy programs, better intervention and prevention programs, and better training for our police officers. So I'm sorry, but the argument just doesn't hold water. The same folks have been given the same opportunity year after year after year. The same people who will run the city under Daniel Davis are running it now. So if you want the same thing we've had, then keep doing the same thing.
I know you recently had a debate with UNF and Action News Jax, our partners over at Action News Jax. And Daniel, you had said under the Sheriff Waters that crime is down, and but the number of murders year to date is starting to get on pace with last year. It ended last year with 162 homicides. So is there any acceptable number in that case? And what other crime stats are you using to feel that maybe crime will go down in Jacksonville?
Well, I don't. There's no acceptable rate for a murder rate, and I think that we have to go where the violence is taking place, and by and large, the sheriff and the sheriff's office, they know who is causing and creating this mayhem in neighborhoods, and we have to go in there and we have to take these folks off the streets and put them in jail. When we do that, crime goes down. And I mentioned earlier, it's a triage situation where we have to make sure we put enough police officers on the street to where when you call 911, your response times are what you would expect. We've had significant growth in this community, and we're going to continue to see growth with all the jobs and the workforce that we've created here. We have to keep pace with the amount of officers that we have on the streets, because it's not fair for people to call and not get a response in a timely manner. And so that's one of the most important things. And I have to tell you, too, I mentioned the other night, there are good, God-fearing people in these neighborhoods that are prisoners in their own homes because bullies are running the streets. On my ride-alongs with the sheriff's office, I've seen it firsthand, and it's not okay. And I would tell you, out of the beach or in Mandarin or in other locations, it's generally a safe place to live. There is crime, but it's not anything like some of the pockets that we have in this community that we really have to focus on and make sure that we're adding new jobs to these communities, that we have the proper infrastructure to where if we bring a manufacturer in, they can at least flush the toilets at their new facility. And that's something as mayor I'm going to focus on. Not leaving any of the communities behind, making sure that everybody feels safe, but everybody has an opportunity for a job and to be able to put food on the table for their families.
Well, he talks about not wanting to leave any of the neighborhoods behind, but the truth is, again, under this same leadership that we have had for the past 8 years, the same neighborhoods that have been promised and promised and promised sidewalks and drainage that works and streets and the infrastructure that does keep neighborhoods safe and makes them more resilient. They've been neglected over and over again. You want to know why a lot of folks don't turn out to vote? It's because they have not had a voice in their government. It's because the same people over and over again promise them, oh, this time is going to be different. I'm going to bring in your neighborhood this time. I'm going to make sure you have those economic opportunities. I'm going to make sure you have that drainage. I met with a bunch of Northside business folks the other day who basically said, you know what? We're trying so hard to keep our heads above water over here. Nobody cares about us. The bottom line is if we're sitting in our business in the dark, underwater, on a street that doesn't get anywhere, it just doesn't do us any good. So the promises are empty when you keep doing the same. You're saying the same stuff that we've heard for the last 8 years. We need change.
But if we're on pace, Donna, with 162 homicides, what would be an acceptable number? What would be an acceptable number after a first year of your administration? If we're on pace for 162, realistically, what does that look like in Jacksonville?
Rich, there are no acceptable homicides, of course. But imagine if we had kept the Jacksonville journey in place. That one thing, that the combination of community policing, such an important piece, of literacy, of food deserts, of the other issues, if we had kept that focus on that very area that is such a hotbed for murders, if we had imagine the lives we could have saved. So it is very, very important that we focus on this, not to the exclusion of everything else in the city, because we have other issues we have to deal with, but these are important issues. And as in a Donna Deegan administration, we can both walk and chew gum at the same time. We will support our police officers. We will also get underneath these causes of violent crime. You have to do both. You have to do both. And you have to provide the infrastructure in the neighborhoods that allow them to feel safe walking their own streets.
Our mayoral candidate spotlight continues in the Fair and Farrah Performance Studio. April Davis, Rich Jones, our colleague Stephen Ponson from Jacksonville's Morning News has been feverishly going through all of the emails and the open mics that have been coming in the WOKV app, and one that still speaks to crime too, Stephen.
Yeah, Rich. So this next question is for both of you. It's from Barry Schuster, and he says that, what is your program to revitalize the east side at A. Philip Randolph near the Jags Stadium, which he says has a high crime rate in that area, and few services for the disadvantaged residents living there?
Let's start with Daniel, since Donna had the last word on the other one.
You know, I think that a focus on downtown and a focus on the east side is incredibly important, and we're going to have considerable growth in that area. We're going to see, in my opinion, a new entertainment area in the east side and in the Bay Street area, Bay Street corridor. I'm going to focus on creating an innovation corridor to where entrepreneurs and folks that want to create innovation have an opportunity to test their products in the corridor from the Regional Transportation Center all the way down to the stadium. I know the Jaguars are focused on making sure they have training programs for folks to learn skills and to learn trades in the construction area. And I think that we can take those opportunities and help put people to work. When I was focused on bringing Amazon to town, we had the opportunity to talk to the leadership at Amazon and ask them, hey, would you please do your training, your first job training opportunity at the Legends Center in the Northwest community. And on a hot June afternoon, I walked through and hundreds of people were standing in line to get a job. And it really was an opportunity for us to get every community involved. I'm very proud of that, working with JTA to make sure folks had transportation back and forth to their job. You know, most of us that are either listening right now or in the studio did not pray when they pushed the button on their car or turned their key to start their car. I mean, most of us didn't even think about that today. But what we have to understand is there are hundreds, thousands of people in this community that are struggling just to hope that their car starts today so they can get to work on time. And those are the folks that we have to really think about from every part of our community, east side, west side, where I grew up, north side, to make sure that they have that transportation. And we partnered with JTA to create a shuttle system to where folks that got those jobs knew that they would be able to get there on time and not have an issue with putting food on the table for their families. I'm proud of that.